my fellow aviators and my beloved mechanics, and also to the general public that this video is aimed at, and to discuss some very important issues that I found in aviation that the general public just is not aware of. This video is named Engine Failure over Riverside, California. Now, about 3 years ago, I had a training airplane, a Piper, a PA-28. And on this airplane, the cylinders were starting to have issues overheating and having problems. And so I did the normal thing that we do in aviation, and that's what's called a top overhaul, where I just had the cylinders replaced. Now, when you replace these cylinders, you have to fly it and fly it hard to break in those cylinders. And so I took two of my students, one a cowboy from San Diego and another a young, lovely lady from Thailand, and we just went out to shoot approaches and fly around the local area to break in these cylinders. Now, when I had these cylinders done, I wanted it done right. I wanted it done professionally. So I chose to take it to what's called a Part 145 repair station, and this is a maintenance shop that's FAA approved and inspected by FAA personnel. The reason for this is because I wanted procedures followed. I wanted trained mechanics to do the repair. I wanted everything to be done right, even though it's a lot more expensive to go to these shops. Well, it was a clear, beautiful day. We started flying to shoot these approaches, and we were flying around. We were over Riverside at about 5,000 to 6,000 feet, when all of a sudden we heard a loud bang. When this loud bang happened, my cowboy, who was sitting left seat, looked over at me and he said, "Something done broke." And I said, "You're done right." So we started looking, and we noticed that the RPM had dropped 300 to 400 RPMs. We were still about 2,000, 2,100 RPMs. The engine was running smoothly. So I started looking at the other gauges. All the other gauges were in the green on the engine. And I started to look at the airframe. I said that infamous phrase that all flight instructors and senior pilots dread saying, "My airplane." I took control of that airplane, and I was feeling for vibrations. I looked at our control surfaces. I looked at the wings. There was nothing broken. There was no vibration. Everything seemed to be going good. The first thing that I thought was, okay, well, we lost a magneto, which is an ignition system. And on airplanes, we have two ignition systems, two magnetos, just for this very situation that I thought was occurring. One ignition system fails, then we have the other. I thought we just lost an ignition system, and we had one, and we were flying perfectly well. So at that time, we headed straight to Redlands Airport, our home base, just as a precautionary landing, just because when anything goes wrong, we always head to the nearest airport for safety. During the 10-minute flight back to Redlands, I noticed that all of a sudden, all the gauges were starting to go into the red. By the time I made it to about 5 miles from Redlands, I was steadily losing power on this engine, and the gauges were in the red. When I came in to land, I knew that if I didn't make this landing, that we were probably going to get injured or killed. This is because, as people in Riverside and Redlands know, most of our terrain is very rocky with boulders, and in this case at Redlands Airport, nothing but a dry riverbed with rocks, boulders, and then a cliff, and then trees. So and then everywhere else was just nothing but houses, schools, shopping centers. So there wasn't really a lot of options for me at that time. And I knew coming in that I had to make that landing to keep everybody safe. Not only myself, but my two students who were flying with me, and the general public underneath that airplane that had no knowledge we were even there. I was able to come in and make that landing safely at Redlands. And I'd like to say that in large part it was to frequent training, good training, and skill. But when it all comes down to it, yeah, that adds to making it. But it was by the grace of God that I was able to safely land that airplane at Redlands with no damage, with no loss of life, with no one getting hurt. When I got off the taxiway and was able to shut down the engine, which was just barely running, we inspected that engine. There was no signs of any damage. I took that engine off that aircraft and I took it to another FAA Part 145 approved repair station. Upon taking this engine apart, this is what the crankshaft looked like. The crankshaft was completely split in two. During the further investigation, it was discovered that this FAA repair station used an unlicensed mechanic who was unsupervised and didn't know how to do the repair. In fact, he didn't even know how to use the tools, which in this case was a torque wrench. He didn't even know how to look to see if it was calibrated. He didn't know how to use the tool. He wasn't supervised. What he did was over-tighten the through bolts, over-tightening the cylinder onto the engine case, which in turn crushed the bearing onto the crankshaft. This crushed bearing caused heat, which in turn snapped that crankshaft in two. This is not a complicated error or problem. This is a rookie mistake. This is a novice mistake. This is somebody rebuilding an engine that has not been trained nor supervised. That's all it is. As far as the mechanic that did this repair, and remember at the time he was unlicensed, I don't hold it against him at all. Remember, everybody in aviation does their best to do a good job and keep everyone safe. The business owner, he bore a lot of responsibility because he knew that this employee was not trained, but he had too much work to do. When I went up there to pick up the airplane, there was at least 10 or 15 airplanes there, and he only had 3 or 4 mechanics, about 2 or 3 helpers. So he was just swamped. Who I do hold responsible is the Riverside FSDO, the Flight Standard District Office. Because the Riverside FSDO had an inspector going out to that shop on a regular basis to inspect. This inspector, I know without a doubt, went through all the forms to make sure every little box was marked off on his form. I know he even took a tape measure to measure where this business owner's desk was, down to the inch. He did everything that didn't matter. And this is the problem that we have with the FAA inspectors now in the FSDO, is that they're incompetent. They don't know what they're looking at. They're focused on the wrong things. And they have no background in this field. And if they did, they'd become bureaucrats sitting in cubicles going over forms that nobody reads and nobody really cares about. Now, if that FAA inspector had come into the shop and walked up to the different people working and said, "Hey, what kind of repairs are you doing? Hey, do you have a license? Is anybody training you? What repairs have you done? What tools do you need to do those repairs? How did you accomplish those repairs?" I believe if the FAA inspector had answered or asked such basic questions, my life wouldn't have been put at risk. The lives of my 2 students wouldn't have been put at risk. And the lives of everyone just living in their homes, having their children at school, being at the mall, wouldn't be at risk of having this airplane come down on them unexpectedly. This is a widespread problem in aviation, and this is why you're seeing airplanes come down out of the sky all over the United States. The system is broken, and it's at the point where this is a huge risk to aviation safety. That is why I'm talking to you, the general public, to make you aware of what's going on, because nobody's telling you what's going on. For this reason, I would like to come out and talk to your group, whether it be a PTA meeting, whether it be Rotary, whether it be the Kiwanis, whatever group or church group, whatever group it is that would like to hear about what's going on in your aviation community, in the skies above you. I would love to come out and talk to you and share with you what's going on and what we can do to fix this problem, because complaining about it isn't going to do any good. We need to take action and fix these problems. I've been in aviation for over 30 years now. I've done my best, but as one pilot, I can only do so much. So that is why I implore you to please get involved in the aviation community and our concerns. We do our best to protect you, both the aviators and the mechanics. We give it 110%. What we're seeing from our government, FAA, and NTSB is nothing less than just going through the motions. Anyways, I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to coming out and talking to your group and addressing these aviation concerns that need to be fixed. Thank you so much, and peace.